Hello, working moms. I am excited because I am doing something I have never done on the podcast before. I am being interviewed. Yes, my colleague, Amy Capello with Pure Joy Life Coaching, asked me to have a conversation with her on LinkedIn where she took questions from her followers and her clients about work-life balance. And then she interviewed me. And I thought it was such a wonderful overview of so many of the things that I speak about here on the podcast and that we do and we talk about in the Ambitious and Balanced community that I decided to post it here as well. Amy and I talked about managing competing priorities, dealing with guilt, and feeling like other people have it figured out and you don't. This is a jam-packed interview all about work-life balance principles. I know you're going to love it. Now, just as a reminder, the interview was originally posted on LinkedIn under Amy Capello's LinkedIn page. So I'm going to drop a few links about her in the show notes if you would like to follow her as well. I highly recommend it. All right, working moms, let's get to it.
Thank you, everybody that's been following along with our conversation for the month of August. We have been talking about how to be present with our partners, with our families, with our kids, because let's be honest, most of us have a lot going on.
Yeah.
And it is hard to, balance all the things and keep all those balls in the air and not drop any of them, which I think that in and of itself is a great thing to think about because we're going to drop the ball. Sometimes it is just going to happen. So how can we make sure that we are prioritizing our priorities and, making sure that we're connecting with our families even when it's chaos. So today we have Rebecca Olson on, and she is going to be answering y'all's questions that you submitted around this topic. And I'm so excited to have her here. I was lucky enough to be able to connect with her a little while ago, and she is just absolutely incredible and works with, this is what she does, y'all, works with busy moms that are doing everything to make sure that they are taking care of themselves, when they're feeling overwhelmed or like they're not enough, so that they can be present with their kids and also crush their career goals, because we often feel like we have to choose between one or the other, and it is possible to do both. So thank you so much, Rebecca, for being here. I'm so excited to dig into this conversation with you and answer these questions.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Thanks for having me, Amy.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So why don't we go ahead and jump into the first one? Okay. So super straightforward, but also really valuable question, and something that I hear time and time again, and you probably do as well. So how can I prioritize my time when I constantly feel like I'm being pulled in multiple directions? And I'm sure whoever submitted this feels that way, but it's probably also the truth. There are probably a lot of things that are vying for her attention. So what are some things that she can do to prioritize her time?
Yeah, I love this question for a lot of reasons. Prioritization is key to lots of things, right? And and on so many levels, we all know that. And even if I were to break down prioritization for you, like it was a step-by-step process, actually, most of us know how to do it.
Right.
It is just something that doesn't often feel good.
Right.
It doesn't feel good to decide to do one thing and not another thing, right? And so I could talk about that a little bit more, but I actually want to step back to the first point. You can see my cat in the background. I told you she'd make an appearance.
I love it.
I want to step back for a moment because I often like to reframe the idea that you even have competing priorities. I actually think as busy working moms that have careers that we want to stay in and that we love, like, of course, we're going to have competing demands all of the time. We're going to have 10 things that are vying for our attention, all of which we would love to give our attention to, and we can't. It's a good thing to be in demand. It's a good thing to have multiple priorities. It's actually the kind of life most of us want to live. We wouldn't really want it any other way. Maybe we want to lessen it a little bit, but we don't want to go to that place where we don't have many things that need us, want us, that we want to do, that bring our, that are pulling us for our attention. Like there's something actually really positive about having a life where multiple things are pulling at you all of the time, right? So that's like the first reframe that I like to give.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but when I think about it like that, it's like, oh yeah, like I choose this life. Like I
Right.
actually, yeah, I would be bored in another kind of life, and I don't want that at all. So
Right.
I would choose this over that any day of the week, right? It
Yeah.
just kind of
Yeah.
softens. It
Right.
softens the problem, so it doesn't
Yeah.
feel so hard to tackle.
Yeah.
So
I
that's the
like that a
first thing
lot.
that I would talk about as we talk about being pulled in multiple directions.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
other thing that I would say is, and Amy and I talked about this, a while ago when we were talking
Mhm.
about doing this live, is the importance of really knowing outside of the moment kind of your hierarchy of
Mhm.
priorities. On
Mhm.
some level,
Mhm.
you have to have stepped back at some
Right.
point and
Right.
said, what's most important to me? So that when you have 5 to 10 things that need you at any given time, you've already spent time outside of the overwhelming moment, having
Right.
thought through which of the things that are going to be most important. And here's something that I think is really key.
Mhm.
And I don't know if this is going to come up in another question. So I
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
hope it does actually, because I think this is a really important message.
Yeah.
4 things that we tend to actually prioritize that
Mhm.
are none of our actual priorities. Number one, it's being available. That's actually
Mm.
not a priority to most of us. And yet we are trying to be available all of the time to people,
Mhm.
to our team, to our boss, to our kids, to our, whatever it is. We
Right.
think
Right.
that we have to be available. We have to have an open door policy to everyone all of the time. That's
Mhm.
actually, for most of us, not a priority. And yet we
Right.
prioritize it all of the time.
Right.
Another one is being on time. I am I am notorious for wanting to be on time. Even this morning, I was trying to get the kids out,
Yeah.
and my daughter's like, "Look, mom, it's okay if we're late." And I'm like, "Ugh,
Aw.
you are so right. It's okay if we're late." And I also want to instill in you that being on time is very important and
Right.
so forth. But
Right.
it's like that. It's like that rush, that we
Yeah.
want to try to prioritize. And I'm like, is it really matter if they're, late to school today? Does it really matter?
Right.
No, it never really matters. Does it really matter if I don't get the email to the client that I said that I was going to get to them at a certain time?
Right.
Almost
Right.
never is it actually a problem. Is that really what I want to bend over backwards for and prioritize as my
Mm,
number one? So that's another
mm.
one.
Yeah.
Responsiveness is another one. So
Okay.
like somebody messages me and I got to get back to them right away. Right. We
Right.
often have that pull, but is that really, do we want to prioritize that over being
Right.
present with our kids? Probably not. Right.
Right.
And then the
Right.
last one is being that feeling of being like 100% prepared. We all
Right.
love to feel 100% prepared. It like
Right.
calms us down. It makes us feel really grounded.
Oh.
It feels really good. And yet over preparation is a huge time
Mm.
suck that takes away
Yeah.
from all sorts of other
Yeah.
productivity and all sorts of other priorities. And so
Right.
we tend to prioritize that. And yet, do we really want to prioritize that over some of
Yeah.
the many other things? So
Right.
really,
Right.
I want to I kind of did it in reverse. I didn't actually talk. I talked about the things that aren't priorities that we tend to prioritize, but it's important to like think about it in
Right.
this way, like
Right.
so that you can break down what is most important to you, because in the
Yeah.
moment, it's going to be really hard to figure that out.
Right. Oh God, I love that. I mean, you hit on so many things. I wanted to write them down because I was afraid I was going to forget them. But, even thinking about the fact that like I choose this life, right? When we are acknowledging that it's a choice, and also I have all these things that are vying for my attention at the same time, I get to choose how to respond, right? Like it
Yeah,
is up to me, which instead of making it feel like this overwhelming pressure, if we make
totally.
it feel like I'm in charge here, I get to call the shots, I know what's important to me, it's more of a gratitude perspective
Yeah,
than it is a, oh, woe is me victim perspective of I have all these things that are going on.
totally.
I've never thought about it like that before. That is amazing.
Yeah.
And you got me on the 100% prepared. I'm going to have to like go eat some
Internalize that a
chocolate
little
and
bit. No,
like,
I hear
yeah.
you. I have a podcast episode. It's called the 75-25 rule that
Okay.
talks all
Okay.
about this. I
Okay.
I like really firmly believe that most of the time, I'm not gonna say
Uh-huh.
100% of the time, but
Uh-huh.
most of the time, 75% prepared is enough. And the other 25% is just you trusting yourself, trusting
Mm,
your ability to be agile in
right.
the situation, to pivot,
Right.
to adapt, trusting your knowledge, trusting your background, trusting you're not going to look like an idiot or a fool up there, right?
Right.
It is just
Right.
about believing in yourself and like having your back no matter what happens,
That's
right? So
incredible. Yeah, please send me that link. And when we
cool.
post this afterwards, I will put a link to that because that I'm going to need it for myself. And other people I'm sure are going to need it too, because I shared with you right before we got on that I have a talk tomorrow, right? And I am the person that no matter what, I can go down the rabbit hole. If it's the rabbit hole of what I want to say, the rabbit hole of the transition from slide one to slide two, the rabbit hole of should the graphic be on this side or this
Yeah.
side, right? Like
Yeah. Gotta let
I
it all
can
go.
over prepare all of it.
Yeah,
And I was
totally.
actually sharing it with my husband last night, and he was like, "You could do it today, and it would be great." And I'm like, I need more time to work on it. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
right in the gut. But I probably needed to hear that. So thank
It's
you
so
for that one.
good. I mean, what I think about is I remember this very this like this conversation that I had with a
Mhm,
client that was really poignant to this,
mhm,
and
mhm.
she was like, "Well, isn't it just can you can't ever really be prepared enough?" Like that was her mentality. A lot of us have that
Right,
mentality, and we're told
right.
just like throw time at it,
Yeah,
over keep preparing until you
yeah,
feel comfortable, right? And I said,
right.
"Well, how does that? So if you have that mentality that you can't be prepared enough,
Mhm.
how does that make you feel as you think about walking into your presentation tomorrow?" She's like, "I feel terrible. I feel like I'm not going to be prepared." I'm like, "I know, because you're telling yourself
That
there's
there's
no way that
no
you
way
could
to
be prepared enough,
prepare.
that there's
Oh
not
my
enough time
gosh.
ever to get prepared to that level." I mean, how
Oh
does
my
that? She's like,
gosh.
I've never thought about it. And I'm like, well, if you just decided that you were prepared enough today, right now, and you
Mhm,
stopped, and
mhm.
I actually, as her coach, I forced her
Yeah,
to, I'm like, you
yeah.
can't, there's no more preparation today. You get to spend time with your kids,
Right,
get a good
right.
night's sleep. You may not look at your deck at all today. And she would like, like her face,
Yeah,
just like deer in
yeah,
head, like, she's like, what are
for
you
sure.
talking about? I'm like, well, you've told me you're prepared enough. You've literally said there's almost nothing you could do in addition that would bring any more knowledge, any more anything that's going to
Yeah.
actually benefit. So let's just say you did it. You're done. Congratulations. So good. Now just go rest.
So
And
good.
she came back to me. She sent me a message the next day. She said, I haven't had a presentation go that well in years. I felt
Wow.
so confident. I felt so good. I was
Oh
so
my
rested. My mind
gosh.
was so clear. Like I did just a quick refresh of my deck just before I walked in, but I practiced feeling like I was prepared enough, and it
Right.
changed everything. I'm like,
It
there
worked.
you go.
It worked. Gosh. And acknowledging that the rest was productive. The rest is preparation, right? Like
Oh my
taking that
gosh.
break is preparation.
Huge.
But yeah, I
Huge.
mean,
So
like,
much
okay.
research. We could have a whole nother talk about that, right? So
I
much
know.
research has gone into that.
I know. It's so true. It is so true. Okay. All right. This is beautiful. I love that this is the next question because I feel like this piggybacks on that one
Okay.
so profoundly that like, yeah, okay, great. I know what's important. I'll whatever. But guilt, right? So how do I stop feeling guilty about not being enough? And I think we all have felt like not enough at some point.
Yeah.
But what I love about this too is at work or at home. It
Mhm.
seems like no matter what, I feel guilty about
Yeah.
one or the other, and it's exhausting.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
how
it
do we
is.
navigate that?
Yeah, I love that question too. I think enoughness is
Mhm,
really, really, really important. I actually
mhm,
believe it's
mhm.
it's at the core of what it takes to experience a life that feels balanced. Because what
Yeah,
we're kind of saying is that life feels enough. That's what a balanced life really feels like. Like I don't need to add anything more.
right.
I don't need to do anything more. I don't have to, like, I can just be in the sufficiency of the life I've created. Like I think
Yeah,
it's at the heart of what we want to feel in our bodies and in
right.
our life as we talk about it. So I think that word is really important to me.
Mhm,
So one
mhm,
of the things I like to parse out when somebody starts talking to me about guilt
mhm.
is really what they're making the situation mean. So I'm just
Okay,
going to use a broad example of this, right? So
okay.
I mean, I remember, and I know this is for a lot of people,
Mhm,
the immense amount of guilt that I felt sending my kid, my first baby,
mhm,
to daycare.
mhm,
And I would
mhm.
go every day and drop her off, and this like immense amount of guilt would overtake
Bless.
me, and it was
Oh.
so big, and I would cry all the time, and this feeling like so then I would ask myself this question. Now I as I'm a coach, I wasn't a coach
Right,
then, but now I'm a coach, and I could
right,
ask myself this question: what was I making that mean? Almost always we're
right.
making it mean I'm not a good enough mom in this case, right?
Wow,
Or if it was
wow.
reversed and we were talking about something at work, it'd be like, I'm not good enough at my job. We're
Mhm.
labeling whatever the situation is as
Right.
a personal attack on you not being good enough. It becomes a part of your identity as a mom or as
Right.
a worker, whatever the
Yeah.
situation is.
Yeah.
And whenever your ability to not perform, produce, be there, whatever it is connected back to how you view yourself, the who
Mm-hmm.
of who you
Mm-hmm.
are, then we feel guilty. So our identity,
Interesting.
so we have to have like broader conversations around this idea that
Right.
your identity
Mm-hmm.
is not found in you being a mom.
Right.
It's not found in you as a worker. It's not found in you as a wife. You are a
Yep.
human being
That's right.
first.
That's
And then
right.
you get to decide how you want to, what roles you want to play in your life
Yep.
and how you want your human beingness to show
Right.
up in the world, right?
Right.
But
Right.
we're a human being first. And
Mm-hmm.
when you can believe in your humanness and you can believe in your enoughness apart
Right.
from all the things that you do and all the ways that you show up, then these decisions, which ultimately these are all trade-off decisions, right?
Right. Right.
I'm choosing to work, so I
Sure.
have to put my kid in daycare, right? And vice versa. All of the
Mm-hmm.
prioritization things that we just talked about.
Right.
So guilt always comes back to that identity. And usually what happens when I start having these conversations with my clients, I say, so if we just stripped away the
Mm-hmm.
guilt and we stripped
Mm-hmm.
away who you are as a human being, like being wrapped up in this, what's left? And
Right.
almost always somebody will tell me they feel sad. I said, yeah, it feels really sad to leave your kid at daycare every day.
Wow.
Like we're not going
Right.
to probably fix that. That is a sad
Right.
experience that you have every single day. It's sad to think that you can't show up for your team, support them in this meeting. You just got to let it go and let them be. And they're probably going to fail because you've got to focus in over here. Like you're not a bad manager. It's not personal, but it
Mm-hmm.
feels bad. It's sad that you can't
Mm-hmm.
be there in the way that you want to and show up. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to feel
Mm-hmm.
sad, but it's not what we want to really take away from this is that you're not a bad person.
Right.
We don't have to label
Right.
you as anything
Right.
less than
Yeah.
because you have to make those trade-off decisions all of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, when we are constantly feeling guilty, thinking that we are bad, then we make guilt-based decisions,
Oh, all the time. Yeah.
right? That are not serving us, our
Yeah.
family, our kids, our staff, our
Because we're trying to fix
peers.
the guilt. And we think that if we
Exactly.
like change it up, if I take my kid out of daycare, then I won't feel
Yes.
guilt anymore. Well, guess what?
Yes.
You're for sure going to feel guilty about something else. There's no question about it, right? Like
Right.
we try to fix the feeling.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Nail on the head. Right. And my husband and I talk about this all the time that mom guilt is just like low hanging fruit. Like
Oh
it's
yeah.
so easy for us to grab onto. We can find anything to feel guilty about. You can do everything and still find a way that like maybe you could have done it better or more or whatever. Like yeah, I made them a lunch, but it wasn't organic. Like we can always find like something, right? To really have that guilt around
As I
it.
gave my kid processed meat today
Right,
to send off to
exactly,
school, and
exactly.
that's a lunchable, right? Like
Exactly,
for sure.
exactly. Yes. But I just want to touch on that identity piece as well because you know what you were saying and stripping all of this away. So before I started my business, I was an assistant principal at the largest school in the state, right? And I went to a leadership training at the beginning of the year. We were doing like the DISC assessment and all of that. I love personality tests. So I'm
Yeah, me
like so
too.
excited to take it, right? And probably all coaches have that, like at least a little bit, right?
I know.
And so we were there that day. I got the report. I'm sitting at a big table with all of my peers, and the guy gets up on the stage and he starts to talk, and he's kind of just introducing concepts or whatever. And he said, "Before I dig in, and maybe you've heard this before, but he said, before I dig in, I want you to answer a question just silently in your head. So if you can do this, maybe you have heard it. And those
So
people
far,
that are watching
I'm not
live,
there yet. So I'm
yeah,
all
yeah,
like, what are
yeah.
you
So
talking about?
let's
I'm not
see.
there yet.
I was checking to see. So we do have people that are watching live too. So if you're watching live, feel free to do this as I'm talking about it. So he said, before we jump in, just quietly in your head, don't share it with anybody. You can keep it to yourself. I want you to pretend that you are on a deserted island and there's no one else there. It is literally just you. You exist in solo on this island. You have every provision you need, because we thought we were going to be asked to like, what are you bringing? Right. But no, you have
Yep.
everything. If you want, down comforters, you have a down comforter. If you want,
Yes, I do. Yes,
unlimited
please.
alcohol. Yes.
The
So like,
beautiful
yes, all
pillow.
the
I do
yeses,
want that
right?
as well.
I
Yes,
want the
thank you.
umbrella and the mimosa, like, whatever
You.
it is, all the
Right.
things, right? So every provision that you need to have the most comfortable, best version of you living life on this island, it's there, it's done. Everything you need is taken care of, right? Except it's just you. So on a scale of 1 to 10, one being the lowest, 10 being the highest, what is your value? You as an individual, just for yourself and reflecting, what is your value as a human on this island? 1 to 10, where are you? I'll give you guys a second to think about that. Okay. So, what was really interesting for me is when he asked this question, I'm sitting at the table with my peers, it was an immediate answer for me. Like, I didn't even have to reflect on it. I had an immediate
Hmm.
answer. Some of the people needed to think a little bit longer about it. And then he did a show of hands and he said, all right, how many of you said a one? And I'm looking around the room and it was over half the room raised their
Yeah.
hand. And what was so funny and so shocking to me is my answer was a 10. Like I didn't even have to think about it. And that's not an
Yeah.
ego
Yeah.
answer. It's a
Yeah.
I have value no matter where I
Yeah.
am or what the situation is or what my
Yeah.
role is. I am who I am no matter where you throw me, right? Like Amy is still Amy.
Totally.
And I guess, just having an area of focus, I didn't realize other people might not see it that way. And so the discussion opened up into, well, I wouldn't have my children. I wouldn't have my partner. I
Mhm.
wouldn't be leading a team. I wouldn't be contributing to the
Totally.
world, right? Like
I'm not
not even
productive. I'm
relational,
not
no
contributing. I'm making
productive.
an impact in no way, shape, or form to the greater good of the world.
Yes.
Totally.
Yes. And so therefore
Totally.
my value is as low as he let me go, which is a one.
Yeah.
And that really kind of took like the scales off my eyes that this is something that we deal with. And I think that it's very common with women in particular,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
that we will create that guilt around everything. So identity and role, when those two get to enmesh together, the guilt's going to be right there. I mean, you hit the nail on the
Yeah,
head.
for sure.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure.
That's awesome. Okay.
So good.
Thank you so much for that. I love it. All right. So, how do I manage the constant pressure to do it all? So, now that we've addressed the guilt part of it, so this person went on to say, I know, I have to give myself grace, but for real, the pressure is intense sometimes. I see all these other moms doing it all, and I feel like I must be doing something wrong. They even have time to get their nails done, and it's been years for me.
Um, I I hear. I mean, even that last comment though, like I trigger something in me
Mhm.
because we have to remember that like social media in particular is
Mhm.
an edited version of someone's life,
Right.
right? You are
Right.
not seeing, you are seeing the things that they're doing, not the things they're
Mhm.
choosing not to do. So in your mind, they have it
Right.
all, but you have not seen the sacrifice.
Right.
I mean, if this truly is a person that's balanced and is
Mhm.
like crushing
Mhm.
all their goals and so forth, you're
Mhm.
not seeing the things that they have edited out in order
Right.
to have to go all into the things that you see on social media that
Mhm.
they're putting out there, right? So
Right.
that's, we always got to be careful when we look at that, but it does
For
come,
sure.
like coming back to this idea of like how are you defining having it all is
Mhm.
also really
Mhm.
important, because that's
Mm.
what does that mean? Does that mean that you never say no to anything? Does that mean
Right.
that you just have a career and you have a family life? Well, I bet she does too. So like
Right.
what is that? What does it really mean? And what I hear a lot that I think is a misunderstanding or a
Mhm.
misrepresentation of having it all is it is this life where you don't have to say no to the things you don't want to say no to.
Right.
And so that means that you have the career and you have the family that you love and you have time in your marriage and you have time for yourself and you're sleeping really well and you're working out and you have hobbies and you go away with your girlfriends on occasion
Right.
and you, right, it's all of these things. It's some level of
Yeah.
like the equation is like a cocktail of all of the various areas
Mhm. Mhm.
of life
Mhm.
having attention all
Right.
of the time,
Right.
right? And
Right.
if that is the definition, then we got to work backwards on how we're ever going to create that on some level. But but for me, one of the things I really like to say is that a balanced life is a ruthlessly edited life. It is a
Mm,
life where you
mm,
have gone all into a
right,
few things, not everything.
right.
And I would guess I would say at least in particular seasons of life, right?
Yeah,
You have gone
yeah.
all in to some things, which means that you have you're not going to go all into some things. You actually used this phrase when you first started this live stream just a bit ago. You
Mhm,
talked about
mhm.
dropping the ball. I just happened to read a
Right.
book called Dropping the Ball.
Oh,
And I can't even think who it's written by. She wrote it like maybe 10 years ago. It's
that's awesome.
really
Okay.
a brilliant book around work
Yeah.
life balance. You should totally read it.
Okay. Yeah. I'll check it
But
out.
I loved it. And her concept
Hmm.
is around this idea that like you got to drop the ball. Like you have to be
Right.
okay dropping the ball.
Right.
I would say I want you to choose which
Mm,
balls to drop
right.
instead of think that you can juggle all the balls
Right.
and then
Right.
of course something is going to drop and because you
Yeah.
haven't necessarily chosen it's going to feel
Right.
even worse and then there's going to be
Right.
guilt and all these other things that come with it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I want you to choose the things that you're going to go all into and make a really conscious decision around the things you are not going to
Right.
go all into
Right.
and deal with all of the emotion and the feelings that come with that because
Yeah.
it's still likely going to feel bad
Right.
to say no to good
Right.
opportunities and things that you would love to do. That feels sad. That feels bad. That's just,
Exactly.
that's life on some
Yeah.
level. But we
Yeah.
could process those emotions probably much easier and much faster versus having an expectation that you were going to do all of the things at a certain level and not be able to do it because that it was inevitable that you were never going to be able to do it and then
Right.
things happen and it just that feels infinitely worse, right? And then that's
Absolutely.
when we start getting into guilt and we get into
Right.
shame. And
Right.
that's where pressure that's really where pressure starts to come is
Hmm.
in the
Hmm.
avoidance of the guilt and the shame. And we don't want any of that. That's
Right.
not a balanced life at all.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that pressure is something of our own creation,
Totally. Yeah, it's your own
we're the ones.
expectations of what you're
Exactly.
supposed to do and the balls that you're supposed to be juggling and at the
Exactly.
level you're supposed to be juggling them.
Exactly. Exactly.
Totally.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And yeah, that comparison is going to automatically take you into the pressure, right? Because you are making a lot of assumptions when you see that. You
Yeah.
might not know she's getting her nails done because her and her husband finally had their last fight and she's going to serve him divorce papers tomorrow and she's trying to make herself feel better
Yeah.
before she does
I
it.
mean, you
Like
have
you have
no
no
idea.
idea, right?
Absolutely no idea.
Yeah.
Right. Or she's getting
Um,
her nails done and her daughter was crying at her at the door when she left
right.
the house, having a
Right.
complete meltdown because she
Right.
didn't want mommy to leave.
Exactly.
And she still chose to go get her nails done, even though her kid is 100% having a meltdown because she's
Right.
leaving and
Right.
she's still choosing to do it anyway.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Like that
Exactly.
if you saw the behind the scenes of that, would you still have
Mhm.
this? Would you still label that as having it
Right.
all? And no, that's
Right.
still she's still going to walk out the door and feel terrible that her kid is crying. She's going to get in the car. She's going to take
Yep.
5 deep breaths. She might
Hmm.
even shed a
Hmm.
tear, and she's going to
Yep.
tell herself this is really hard, and she's going to have to give herself a pep talk to
Yep.
still go get her nails done because she
Exactly.
could still in her brain at least hear her kid crying
Yep.
and she has to
Yep.
remake the decision that her nails are more important
Right.
than spending time with her kids because she really needs this time for herself and all of
Yep.
the things. That's what's happening on the other side. You don't get to see any of that
Yes.
in social media, right?
Yes.
Like that is the
Exactly.
backstory into being able to do that.
100%. We don't have
Oh,
those conversations,
no,
often
no.
enough, right?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
hard, so
Yeah.
hard.
Absolutely.
And I do want to like loop back. I know we're at
Yeah.
time here, but I
Oh
want to
no,
loop
you're
back to
good.
the
You're good.
idea that pressure is well, you said it's created. Yes, it's created
Hmm.
in the
Hmm.
in the attempting to avoid guilt and shame. It's also created in trying to avoid not feeling enough, not feeling valued, right? It still has this
Right.
identity connection. If you're somebody
Yeah.
that's not willing to say no and let some balls drop intentionally, likely it's because
Hmm.
your identity is so tied
Right.
to having to do everything for everyone and make sure everything is at a certain level of expectation. That's all an identity. That's a
Yeah.
who,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that you're so interconnected to that of course it feels better to try to do it all and attempt to do it all but and only do a half of it well and whatnot than it does
Right.
to go through that feeling of feeling like not enough and feeling like a
Exactly.
failure and feeling
Yeah.
all of the shame that's associated
Right.
to that in your identity, right? Like
Right.
it's an
Right.
identity protection.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. Yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. That's a great
100%.
idea. An identity. It's like I'm gonna have to think about that. Identity
Yeah.
protection. What's that
Hmm. Hmm.
phrase? Like you want to protect your identity, like online. Online. I don't know. I just had like a whole concept run through my head. I'm gonna have to label
Yes.
it.
I feel like
So
that could
good.
be a whole masterclass or a course,
Oh
right, on
yeah.
how we are protecting that identity.
So good.
And also there's so many assumptions. We could talk about that forever. But one of the assumptions as well is that and this is so huge because I find myself doing this too, right? So like let's just use that example there that we see the nails that are getting done and there's an assumption that that mom figured out something that you haven't yet figured out,
Right.
right? That maybe it was, this is possible
Ooh,
if
that's
I
good.
hired a
Yeah.
nanny, or this is possible if I,
Totally.
made $1 million a year. This is whatever it is, but that there's some like magic
Mhm.
formula or situation that you just haven't figured out, but she did, or she has resources that you don't have, or whatever.
Yeah.
And words are
And then
hard.
you're less than
Yes, you're less than,
because of
and
it.
it creates this like constant need
Yeah.
to strive and work harder and figure out what's wrong with you when
Yeah.
in truth, everything that you just said,
Yeah, again,
that whole
an
situation.
identity of like, I'm not smart enough, I'm not capable
Exactly.
enough, I
Exactly.
don't have enough capacity. All of that
Yep.
is
Yep.
related to identity that you
It
start
is.
labeling it. Yeah, if somebody else
Yeah.
has it figured
Yeah.
out, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I feel seen in that because
Yeah.
I think I live in that space a lot, feeling like there's some
Same.
mysterious something that I don't know. And
Exactly.
I take that on. Yeah, I make
Yeah.
that mean a whole lot of things
Yeah.
about me. I have to work
Exactly.
myself out of that mindset all the time.
Exactly. 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 Yeah. Thanks for normalizing that. Even as someone who's a coach, that like we also still deal with these things. And that's one of
Oh
the
my
reasons we
gosh.
can talk so authentically on it is because like we live this day to day
It's
as
active.
well.
I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
what one of the mysteries I like to take out of the conversation around balance is that it's
Hmm.
not an arrival.
Yes. Yes.
It's not the end of the race. It is you're in a constant
Yep.
marathon
Yep.
toward a never
Yep.
ending goal
Ever.
line.
Ever.
You never will arrive. It's
Yep.
constant. And I have
Yep.
to tell
Yep.
myself that in
Yeah.
other ways
Yeah.
and particularly when it comes to business stuff and all sorts
Yes.
of things, like there's never an
Yes.
arrival.
Yes.
But
Yes.
but we have this sense that like I'm just trying to get to this place where I
Hmm.
feel balanced and
Hmm.
and now
Yeah.
and then I get a rest. No,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
balance is a constant
It is.
tweaking of life. It takes intentionality. It takes daily
Mhm,
practices
mhm,
that
mhm,
require that require
mhm.
daily decisions to
Yep,
prioritize some things
yep,
and not
yep,
others and processing all of those emotions.
yep.
It is it's consistent. And
Yeah,
so it's
yeah.
important to remember that.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
that can sound exhausting to think like this is, oh my gosh, Rebecca, there's never an arrival. And I do, even as I was saying, I was like, wow, Rebecca, that feels so hard. That's like a terrible thing to say out there. And yet I think that it is, you can get, when you find the tools, when you find the
Mhm,
rhythms,
mhm,
when you make the decisions and
mhm.
overcome the emotions that come with the hard decisions,
Right,
it the maintenance of balance gets
right.
infinitely easier, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah,
beginning, it does take a lot of
yeah,
learning, having to make really tough decisions,
for sure.
learning how to prioritize in a different way and overcome all of those emotions,
Right.
separating your identity from your work
Mhm,
and from being a
mhm,
mom and from your
mhm,
productivity and
mhm.
really like building that feeling of sufficiency within you.
Yeah,
That there's
yeah,
hard work
yeah.
that launches the process, but once
Right.
you've gotten there and you have those tools, what your priorities are and how to go about it, those decisions get easier.
Yeah,
Those emotions don't
yeah,
feel so strong. You have a
exactly.
whole toolkit in order to
Yeah,
process those things as they come up, as life changes. It is not as difficult as
right.
it sounds going forward, but it still takes intentional thought.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to the gym. That
Yeah,
initial 6 months in the gym sucks. And then after that, it's just maintenance. But our
totally.
last
Totally.
question. I love that you said daily practices because that's exactly what
Oh,
they
good.
asked. They said,
Yes.
what are some
Look at us.
quick
Look at us just like rolling with it. And
I
like, it
know,
was like we planned this.
right? Yes. So, what are some quick daily practices that I can add to reduce stress? And they said to stop feeling like I'm dropping the ball all the time, but just, in general, to have balance, I think is
Yeah.
probably exactly what they're hitting on, right? What are some, I don't know, one or two quick daily practices that we can
Yeah.
start no matter where we are in helping us get to that balance?
Yeah, I love this, and I actually am launching a group coming up this fall,
Nice.
and it's all about. It's just like I'm streamlining work life balance. 3 months, you're gonna make all those decisions. You're gonna
Oh,
learn all the tools. You're gonna fix your overworking behaviors. You're gonna get to this place of like, oh, I can get into maintenance mode because I've done all the hard work. We're
nice.
gonna do it together in 3 months. I'm so
Nice.
excited about this group.
Nice.
It's called Ambitious and Balanced. Okay.
Oh,
So,
I love
but one
it.
of the things that we're going to do is I'm teaching them two
Mhm.
daily practices, and they're just going to repeat those every single day. They don't have to learn anything
Okay.
else except these two that you're
Okay.
going to master. So
Okay.
I'll quickly go over them. Obviously, I have a whole formula to them, but I'll
For sure.
quickly like talk about them at a high level
Okay.
because I think they're really important. The
Yeah.
first one is starting your day. I like to say starting your work day, ideally,
Okay.
just because I think the chaos of the morning with the can be really difficult. But some people like to like wake up and do their
Right.
journaling. No, fine,
Right.
great,
Right.
doing
Right.
that. But usually I would say right at the start of your workday, because we can be
Hmm.
super consistent with that time frame.
Hmm.
Your goal is to get into an intentional positive thought space for your day.
Okay.
Most of us sit down at our computer and the thoughts that are going through our head are like, oh my gosh, I have so much to do today. There is not enough time. When am
Yes.
I going to get that done? I'm not going to be able to get that done.
I'm already behind.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
already
Yeah.
behind. I can't do this. This is
Yeah.
really hard. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the mentality, right? And so
Right.
you listen to those thoughts. Of course, you're going to create an entirely stressful, overwhelmed, pressure-filled day if you're starting your day with those thoughts, right? So we
Yeah.
want to start
Yeah.
your day with something different.
Hmm.
And that could look like all sorts of things, but really, if I were to give you one to just start practicing every single day, or really
Yeah.
it's three, but it's my enough triad that I
Yeah.
like to
Yeah.
call it. I am enough. I'm good enough. I'm doing enough. You
Uh,
literally write those three things down. Doesn't even have to be on a consistent piece of paper. It doesn't have to be a journal. It could be a little
right.
sticky pad, right? It doesn't really
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
You write those three thoughts down, and you take even just 2 minutes to
Mm,
think about how you already believe those thoughts right now, how you
right.
already know those thoughts are true, that you
Right.
don't have to prove those thoughts at all. Like they are already embodied within you, right? You just
Yeah.
start your day thinking, I am enough, I'm good enough, and I'm doing enough. And if you have a hard time even finding evidence for that, sometimes
Right.
I literally will take a whole page and I'll just write them over
Oh,
and over
wow.
and over again until
Yeah.
my body like releases and I go,
Right.
oh yeah,
Okay.
this is true.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah.
it's the 20th time that I wrote it down. It doesn't take that long. I mean, I'm talking about something
Yeah.
that takes less than 5 minutes, right?
Right.
But
Right.
the
Right.
point is getting your head into an intentional thought space. The
Yeah.
second thing I would say is we're going to bookend the day.
Okay. Okay.
Your end of day transition from work to home is also critical. If you
Yeah.
end your work day, as most of us do, feeling like I didn't get enough done today,
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
behind, I'm letting
For
people
sure.
down, I shouldn't have done it that way. Like if those are your thoughts and you're going to go into your home life, it makes perfect sense why you're going to log back on. It makes perfect sense why you're going to
Yeah.
stay available. It makes perfect sense why you're going to be distracted and you haven't let
Right.
anything go. Like you left your day feeling like you weren't good enough, you didn't do enough, and you're letting everybody down, right? So it's
Right.
also another key moment where we want to kind of
Mm.
release all of the thoughts for the day, all of the negative thoughts for the day,
Yeah.
and come into our
Yeah.
home life so we can be really present, which is what all of us really want when we're creating work-life balance, right?
Absolutely.
So I would say that practice could look very similar. You could bookend the same
Yeah.
practice if you really wanted to. But
Okay.
one
Okay.
of the things that I really like to say at the end of your day is to just focus on progress made. It's the progress effect. If you went on and Googled that is tons of research around what the progress effect is. But it's
Okay.
essentially your brain is really, really good at pointing out to you all the things that you did not do and all
For
of the
sure.
ways that you missed the mark. It's natural. Your
Right.
job is every single day at the end of your work day to focus on progress made. All the things that you accomplished, and I would just write them down. All the things
Yeah.
that you did, all the
Yeah.
conversations that you had, all the ways that you moved something, even if it was just a little bit forward. And then I like
Hmm.
to add a little extra thing at the end of that, which is to
Hmm.
just say, how was that valuable today?
Okay.
Like really sinking into this idea that you provide value in your
Mhm.
workplace and in your day, and I
Mhm.
have to actually put a sentence to that, answer that.
Right.
These things were valuable today because it's going to
Right.
help your whole brain just go, oh, I really did do a lot today. I
Right.
can shut down. It's okay for me to let go and shut down. Right. So, I
Wow.
mean, I definitely flesh this out in the practices that I give my clients, but the
Yeah.
very high level, it's very
Yeah.
simple. Like
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
do need to go in feel with the right thoughts, and we need
Yeah.
to end our day feeling really good about what we've accomplished instead of focusing so much on the negative. So
And what we didn't
those
get
would be the two
done.
that I would give.
I am going to add a small little tidbit to that because
Yeah.
you have absolutely called me out and I feel challenged. So, my coach encouraged me because I did always feel behind. And, I have practices and coaching, self coaching I can do that's better than I was a year ago, but like also still
Sure.
feeling like
Totally.
I'm in this exponential growth in my business right now. And I just feel behind. And so she said, get a journal. And I'm not really a journaler, but I did get a journal.
Yeah.
And kind of like you were saying with the bookends. So at the end of my workday, and she encouraged me to write down my wins. And
Yeah.
that is for me, if I can be really vulnerable and transparent and authentic
Yeah.
here, that's hard because what it takes for me to qualify something as a win
Yeah.
as a high achiever and a perfectionist is really
Totally.
difficult. And so
That's a good
she
question. I wrote
said,
that down myself. I'm like, ooh, that would be a hard one for me
right?
too.
So, what she encouraged me to do is to see the action as the win, not the
Mm.
result, right?
Mm.
So I took action to make sure I had a
Yeah.
conversation with someone I hadn't followed up before. It doesn't matter that they didn't respond to me. I took the action I needed to take. That was my win, right?
Yeah.
I made sure that I created this resource for this client that I've promised them for a month that I haven't gotten to them yet. But it was really
Yeah.
important. And I took the action to do it. Maybe I didn't finish it yet, but I'm like halfway there and that action got so it's not the result that is the
Yeah.
win. The win is taking the action. But I have to say, I'm gonna call myself out. The last day I did this was on August 8th, and I haven't done it since. So I'm gonna pull this out
Right.
so it's on my
Yeah.
desk so I can see it because it's easy to let those things go, but when you're doing them, they really do make a difference. So
Part of the maintenance plan.
part of the maintenance. I love it. So, thank you for this. I have been challenged and learned things, and I'm going to look into a few of these, like the progress, the fact I haven't heard that before. So, I'm going to look into that. How can people connect with you, and when does the Ambitious and Balanced group roll out? Because that sounds
Yeah.
absolutely incredible.
Yeah. So really the best way to follow me is
Hmm.
is on my podcast, which is
Perfect.
called Ambitious and Balanced Working
Nice.
Moms.
Okay.
So very easy to find. I give lots of content, lots of tools, lots of strategies on that. And then I have a website you can go to obviously and get
Perfect.
more information on that. But the group is going to launch. We're going to start in October.
Okay. Perfect.
And so signups are going to start, actually, they start next week.
Oh,
And
fun.
if
Okay.
you check the next episode of the podcast, which comes
Hmm.
out on Mondays.
Okay.
So if you check the next one coming out next Monday, I'm going to like roll it all out. I'm giving you all the
Perfect.
details. You'll have the link and so forth to start signing up for that. I'm only taking 10 amazing women
Okay.
into
Okay.
this program in this first iteration of it. So I'm so stoked about it. It's going to be great.
All right. So people better hop up and
Yeah,
join
definitely.
because that is something
Definitely.
that would be super powerful for them to have those resources and that guidance as they're going along.
Yep.
Knowing that it's not even just like, here's a tip, but like that they're going to have a coach that walks them through step by step and can hold them accountable to the process for that 3 months is priceless. That's amazing. So we will
Yep.
make sure to share that on our page as well. That's amazing. So
Thank you so
Rebecca,
much.
thank you so much for coming on and for being here. Absolutely amazing insights. And I am encouraged and going to make sure that I do my journal at the end
I love it.
so
So
that I can
good.
hold myself accountable too. So thank you so much. And
Yeah.
yeah, we will connect with you soon. Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks, Amy. Hey, working moms, thank you for being a part of this community. If you're listening to this podcast, it's because you are a career-driven, goal-focused, ambitious working mom that is looking for more support and practical tools to balance life. Where you're in the right place, and it has been an honor to support you through this free podcast. But I want more women just like you to get the support they need through this resource. And the best way you can help me do that is by rating and reviewing this podcast. When you rate and review, it makes its way into the algorithm, and then it recommends the podcast to more amazing, ambitious women just like yourself. I thank you in advance, and until next week, let's get to it.